My buddy Travis called me on a Thursday morning. The first thing out of his mouth was that his truck was drinking oil, and he could not figure out where it was going. I asked him one question: does the dipstick keep popping up a little, like something is pushing it from underneath? Dead silence on the other end. He said, yeah, it does. I told him I knew exactly what it was and that it was going to cost him about $3. He said his dealer had left him a voicemail about a $400 repair. That voicemail was still sitting unheard on his phone. This is what I showed him in his driveway that afternoon. What Travis was describing is one of the most common engine complaints in the country, and almost nobody knows what actually causes it. RepairPal puts the national average shop bill at $112 to $220. Kelley Blue Book lists $186 to $220. Shops charge you for diagnostic time, labor at $120 to $185 an hour, depending on where you live, and the part is marked up significantly from what they paid. One Ford owner on Car Talk reported a $710 quote for this exact job. The part cost $2.99. Now stay with me, because what this valve actually does is the part that changes how you look at every oil leak you've ever had. Every time a cylinder fires, a small fraction of combustion gases, unburned fuel, water vapor, and hot exhaust squeezes past the piston rings and falls into the crankcase. Engineers call this blow-by. General Motors Research Laboratories presented a study at the SAE annual meeting in Detroit in 1960, documenting that blow-by accounted for roughly 40% of hydrocarbon emissions on uncontrolled engines. It was alarming enough that California mandated a fix on all new cars the very next year. The federal government made it national for the 1968 model year. The fix is a positive crankcase ventilation valve called the PCV. It is a one-way check valve about the size of your thumb, connecting the valve cover to the intake manifold. The intake manifold runs at vacuum, roughly 18 to 22 inches of mercury at idle, and that vacuum draws those gases back into the engine to be reburned. A spring-loaded pintle inside modulates the flow, nearly closed at idle when vacuum is high, wide open at cruise when blow-by peaks, and slammed shut on a backfire to keep flame out of the crankcase. When that pintle sticks closed, and it does because those gases are saturated with oil mist and acids, crankcase pressure builds. It pushes against every seal in the engine: the valve cover gasket, the rear main seal, and the oil pan gasket. The oil Travis was losing was not coming from one bad seal. It was being pushed out of all of them at once. What does not escape turns to sludge and attacks the bearings. That is how a $3 valve turns into a $3,500 piston ring job. Travis's truck was a 2014 F-150 with a 5-liter, and I had done this same repair on my own truck 2 years before when it showed the same symptom. He already had the hood up when I got there. I reached over to the passenger side valve cover, found the PCV valve right at the top, a small plastic cylinder and a rubber grommet with a hose going to the intake, and pulled it straight out with my hand. No tools. I shook it in front of him. The pintail inside barely moved. That is the piece that is supposed to open and close with engine load, and his had stiffened up from years of oil mist and combustion residue. His crankcase had been running under positive pressure for who knows how long, pushing oil out past the valve cover gasket every time he drove. He had probably lost 1.5 quarts in the last 5,000 miles and never connected it. I handed him the Duralast PCV 183DL I had grabbed at AutoZone on the way over, $2.99. The new one dropped into the same grommet with a click, hose back on. I'm not gonna lie, the whole thing took 90 seconds. Travis looked at that little valve and asked, "Is that it?" That is it. Now here's the part I almost didn't tell him, because there's a detail about this valve that gets guys in trouble, even guys who do their own work, and getting it wrong can cost you more than the original problem. The Duralast I put in Travis's truck cost $2.99. If he'd let the dealer handle it, they would have installed a Motorcraft branded valve, $9 to $12 on Amazon, already above parts counter price. Honda owners deal with the same markup. Genuine Honda PCV at the dealer runs $30 to $50. The aftermarket equivalent at AutoZone is $3 to $8. Same pintle, same spring, same job, different sticker. If your shop has ever quoted you for this exact job, drop the number in the comments. I want to see what they charged. The supply chain adds margin at every step, and diagnostic time plus labor at $150 an hour plus a 4 times part markup is how $2.99 turns into $220 on an invoice. The EPA has required this part on every car sold in America since 1968. Half the country has never heard of it. That's not a conspiracy. It's just not a conversation anyone in the service bay is going to start for you. It's a business model. Now look, PCV valves are calibrated to a specific engine's flow rate. A universal valve might fit physically, but have the wrong orifice diameter inside. On a turbocharged or direct injection engine, that will pull oil mist straight into the intake manifold. Match the original equipment part number, not just the make and model. For 2004 to 2010 F-150, Expedition, and F-250 owners with the 5.4 liter Triton 3 valve, I did a video about a transmission filter that a dealer called not serviceable. I found it right there on their own shelf. Ford used the same play on this valve cover, and in the Triton it is true. The PCV is built into the driver's side cover. There is no separate part to buy. The assembly runs from $300 to $600. What works on those trucks is a $40 catch can plumbed to the same ports. The setup is in the description. Travis never called that dealer back. His truck has been running clean for 3 months now. No oil on the driveway, the dipstick stays put, and no burning smell at cold start. It cost $2.99 and took 90 seconds in his driveway. That $400 voicemail aged off his phone before he ever listened to it.